Number 5. The Island of the Dolls. Around 50 years ago, a reclusive Mexican artist named Julian Santana Barrera decided to relocate to an abandoned island on Lake Texuilo in the Xochimilco woods just outside Mexico City. However, after only a few days there, he discovered a young girl floating in the canal, and despite his best efforts to save her, she sadly drowned. Barrera was racked with guilt, so he hung a doll from a tree as a mark of respect, because what better way to commemorate a tragic young girl than by hammering a nail through a toy doll's face? But soon, Barrera began to hear footsteps in the night, along with the haunting screams of a young woman. He was convinced the girl had possessed the doll he had hung from the tree, so he decided to placate her by hanging more and more and more. Many of the dolls he used were found in the trash, and so many were hideously deformed. Yet, this is part of the reason this formerly abandoned wood is now hugely popular with tourists, many of whom claim to hear eerie whispers from these old woodland dolls.
What are you doing? You, stop looking up my skirt, pervert.
Oh, and as a spooky addendum to this story, 40 years after Julian Santana Barrera found the little girl in the canal, he too was found dead, drowned in the same spot with no explanation. Number 4. American Tunnel. Often called Canada's most haunted place, the Marathon Tunnel near Thorold, Ontario, comprises over 700 feet of pure dark terror. The entrance is now bricked up thanks to the number of drunken teenagers breaking into the structurally unsafe tunnel as a place to bone and get high. But when it was operational, Marathon was the site for a string of horrifying accidents. 107 men died during the construction of the tunnel and the nearby canal, but the most shocking incident came in 1903 when 2 steam locomotives crashed inside the Marathon. Despite only running at grandma-friendly 22 miles an hour, both drivers were brutally maimed. One died at the scene after being minced up into the mangled wreckage of the train's boiler. With rescuers trying so hard to free him, they actually pulled his legs clean off. I say clean, it probably wasn't very clean at all. The other driver suffered 90% burns and died later in hospital. It is said that both their spirits haunt the tunnel to this very day. Would you want to get drunk and frisky in a place like that? Number 3. Danvers State Hospital. The only place creepier than ghosts are crazy people ghosts. I'm not sure why that's worse, it just is. But if you want to test this for yourself, then the remains of Danvers State Hospital would be a good place to start. This Massachusetts facility was famously the inspiration for H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham Sanatorium, and its Gothic design must prove particularly unsettling for the mentally ill people who resided here. In the 1940s, it had over 2,500 patients, but with staff numbers lacking, many of these poor afflicted people became neglected, with countless incidents recorded of patients dying and not being found until days or even weeks later. With its endlessly long hallways and confusing layout and suited to redevelopment, much of the complex was demolished in the early 2000s to make way for apartments. But some buildings do still remain, as does the cemetery, and many of the facility's underground tunnels. So, if you're looking for a condo replete with undiscovered corpses, Danvers State Hospital is the place for you. Number 2. Chateau Miranda. Also known as Miranda Castle, you may recognize this 19th century neo-Gothic construction from NBC's Hannibal series. The castle is now privately owned and remains empty aside from the occasional trespassers. But during its lifetime, it has had some rather interesting occupants. Chateau Miranda was built in 1866 for the leader Kirk de Beaufort family after their former home became unsafe due to the French Revolution. Fast forward 80 years, and one of the most brutal conflicts of the Second World War took place around here, with the Battle of the Bulge leaving dead soldiers from both sides strewn around its grounds. The castle was occupied by the Nazis during this time, but after the war, the Third Reich gave way to 3-year-olds, as the building was transformed into an orphanage and holiday camp for sickly young children. The castle has been abandoned since 1991, with the owners claiming high maintenance costs have put prospective buyers off. But even if the castle was given away for free, it's gonna be a tough sell when your place is haunted by French dudes, not seasoned orphans. And finally, number 1, Pripyat. The site of the Chernobyl meltdown in 1986 has to be on this list, just for the sheer number of weird things seen by those who have dared to venture back. Once home to nearly 50,000 people, Pripyat today stands empty due to the high levels of radiation caused by the disaster, and won't be habitable by humans for another 20,000 years. Many families were forced to flee their homes with no time to collect their possessions, and visitors to the site have described these fully furnished homes as an eerie snapshot of the Soviet world of 30 years past. But in the absence of humans, it is the animals who have taken over, with wild boar, wolves, and deer thriving in the abandoned ruins of the town. From recent photographs, the whole thing looks like a scene from a Ridley Scott reboot of Jumanji. But amongst the cute creatures and pretty flowers looks sinister possibility. Some tourists have spotted beasts and blooms looking and behaving very strangely indeed, due to the radiation-based deformities, which has convinced me that one day in this post-apocalyptic nature reserve, someone's gonna run into a whole mess of death claws, probably while searching a desk drawer for Fancy Lad's snack cakes. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy the video, please let me know by clicking the like button. Do share, write a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so that you can catch up my next